That's interesting. Can I come to you off the back of that, Dr. Peter Byrne from the Australian Industry Group? We keep hearing over and over again today, business wants certainty. That's what we want, policy certainty around all of this. Does that mean that by the time the next election rolls around, rollback of a carbon tax and emissions trading scheme won't be a feasible policy to take to the people?
Well, I agree that certainty is very important. For a long time, a lot of our members have been saying to us, just make it go away, that would give us certainty. Look, this is the horror scenario that we face, that we being everyone, but particularly the boardrooms that John mentioned. In a year, we start paying for, or liabilities start arising for greenhouse gas emissions, and electricity bills go up and the like. A year and a half later, say there's an election and there's a change of government, but they don't win control of the Senate. They go 3 times to the Senate to qualify for the double dissolution. That's a year later. And then they get their bill through in the joint sitting of joint sitting of both houses. So just think of the horror that that's going to present for this uncertainty issue. For the boardrooms who are currently waiting, some of them who are hoarding ideas, that's the nightmare scenario. Because in addition to unwinding the ETS, it will almost be an ETS by then, they will then the coalition would have to be putting in place its alternative arrangements to reduce emissions to meet that 2020 target.
So the rules would have changed while the old rules are still in and we're trying to boot them out.
Yeah, and they haven't really designed it yet, so they've got to design it, get rid of the old one, go through all that political machinations, and then put in place their new system, and no one really is that confident whether it's going to work. So we'd be better off, frankly, and then, to make it worse, because no one really thinks, including the Liberal Party, thinks that this is a really long-term plan, so that by about 2018 or so, we're going to have to do something similar to a CPRS anyway, or a carbon pricing mechanism anyway. So we put this in, we go through a period, we take it out, we put something else in, and we redesign it and we put it back in again. Then that's a decade, another decade for that matter, of wasted opportunity and lack of investment. And if people were worried about blackouts now, that we would definitely be confronting blackouts under that scenario.
And would that, you know your membership, that would be their message to Tony Abbott or to anybody else who proposed that in whatever scenario? I mean, that we could have a couple of quick elections if Labor lost their nerve. It's not necessarily a political question.
Oh, look, I do know our membership, and the message is still make it go away.
Right.
But
do they accept that it's not going away now?
They may well, but the message is still make it go away. People don't, business as a general rule doesn't want this thing to happen. But
and what do you say in response? There's no way it does go away, you just get some other interim solution in the nightmare scenario you've just outlined.
Well, then that's right. That's right. So there's a job that needs to be done in communicating not just to the broader community but to the business community to raise that issue. Now, that's partly our responsibility, partly the government's responsibility, partly the general media and the like. But at the moment, that's not happening.
That's fascinating, because that was the other question that you and I were going to discuss right here, which was, business has been saying for years, we need certainty, we need a market-driven mechanism. And then when all of that starts to happen, they say, oh, save us from the market-driven mechanism. Protect us against it, the forces of the market. Help, help. Is that too sarcastic a view of the world?
Well, what they're objecting to is a rise in costs.
Yeah.
And people want the market-driven mechanism relative to the alternative of micro-regulation and licensing and all that sort of stuff. But most of all, right now, they prefer the cost to go away. And that's the challenge from a business point, in the business community.
Tony, Mark, can I come to you? Just for the sake of it, a provocative question. Is the structural adjustment package that goes along with this carbon tax a saving grace for many struggling industries? I mean, who cares whether it's a green initiative, a pink initiative or a purple initiative? Thank goodness for the structural adjustment assistance.
Yeah, that's largely true, and the same with the anti-dumping measures that were introduced recently. Manufacturing's struggling for a range of reasons, and it can't be the carbon price because we haven't got one yet. Look, structural adjustments also, I think, justified on the basis that a carbon price is a further structural adjustment. It's all industries all at once, and that doesn't usually happen. So I think this package really is tailored to the contours of our economy, and we shouldn't be ashamed about that. We need to ensure that that package and the various funds and the development bank that's been created are used to clean up industry. Otherwise, you know, the choices are clean up industry or close them down, and we fight for cleaning up industry.
And just off the back of that, what's the attitude of, say, your membership in mining, of the workers in mining about this? Are there fears? Do you reassure them about their jobs? Do you explain to them that some jobs may go? And what is their general attitude to this carbon tax?
Sure. Well, we've been talking about it for a decade and voting on it and voting in favour of it. But I can tell you it's a whole lot easier when there's bipartisan support. But there's not bipartisan support now, so people are confused. So the best thing we can do is get the facts out before people. That does have the effect of alleviating most concerns. And I think that the government strategy of giving people experience of it and the sky not falling in is probably the only way to get some closure on the issue. Union members are a bit like Peter's members. They'd like it all to go away too. In terms of the jobs, look, we've got an active scare campaign being run by the Minerals Council, which is just a blatant lie. The resources industry, the coal industry in particular, is booming. It will double by mid-century. There are thousands more jobs that will be created. So that doesn't help. They've got lots of money to waste on that sort of campaign. A lot of workers don't buy that because all around them they can see their mine doubling in capacity, another loader being built, a new rail line going in. They're not the symptoms of a dying industry.
All right, can we open up to questions now? We have microphones positioned around the room. There's one at the back there, if we could take it to this lady down there. Any other questions? There's a gentleman here. And I'll just kick it off with this lady on this side of the room. We'll work across this way.
Is that on? Yeah. I was pleased to hear Matthew Wright talking about the future energy mix, and it was mainly solar and wind. But there's a small component that was biofuels. I don't think Matthew's here. But I just thought that people should be aware of my opinion on this anyway, which I think we should not be concentrating on biofuels at all. I've read recently that in the United States, 40% of their corn crop is now going to biofuels, and I think that's a really poor use of land and food crops, and especially when you look at the situation in Africa and the world food prices.
Thank you for that. As Tony says, we'll take that as a comment, unless you want to respond, Jerry.
No, coming out of the oil industry, you know, I have some fairly strong views about biofuels.
Yes, you do.
And one strong view is I agree with you entirely. What's happening in the US has got nothing to do with environmental sustainability. It's got all to do with energy security. You know, I think it's poor policy. But, you know, all biofuels aren't the same. And the second generation biofuels, which are being heavily researched, that will actually mean a zero carbon footprint, and they will become reality in the future. They're not going to eat into the food chain. You know, some of the methods are going to be using waste from plant products, etc. So biofuels, I think, will be a big part of the future, but not the sort of biofuels that we've seen in the US, which is just basically taking a food crop and you know, turning it into fuel. The other point I'd make is that there isn't a silver bullet for this, and it's going to take a whole range of solutions across the world, and some countries will do some things more than others, but it's going to take a range of solutions, and we need to be very careful about not chucking things out that have potential just because someone's done it the wrong way in the past.